Welcome to our marriage and relationship nuggets. Meet Coach Mary Yulimaki. Today we'll be talking about setting healthy boundaries with our in-laws. Setting healthy boundaries with our in-laws. What do I mean by in-laws? When I'm talking about in-laws, I'm referring to the parents and siblings of your spouse, the woman or the husband, their family members, their direct family members, their siblings, and parents, most especially. The way we relate with our in laws can influence our marriage positively or negatively. I repeat, the way we give opportunities and open doors to our in laws in our marriage, it may affect our marriage positively and negatively. So it's very vital for us to set healthy boundaries towards our in laws. How do we want to incorporate them in our new family? Remember, when you are married, your family is priority. You, your wife, and children, they are priority at that moment. You are somehow a little bit separated from your original parents and siblings because they have handed authority to the husband. And that's why the Bible says in Matthew 19, verse 5 and 6, it says that, and said, "For this cause shall a man leave the father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and the twain shall be one flesh." In marriage, we become one flesh when there is that covenant established between the man and the woman. That's why the Bible commands and instructs the that the man leaves his father and mother and comes and cleave to the wife, and they become one flesh, and they begin a new family. So you are somehow leaving your parents and establishing a union with your husband, a bit of distance, and that is why setting healthy boundaries is vital for our marriages to flourish in the best order. And it continues to say in verse 6, Matthew 19, verse 6, "Wherefore they are no more twine, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Which just says we become one flesh, one family, one union when we are married to our spouse. And the Bible goes further to instruct that let no man put asunder what God has joined together. It was one of the first covenants God made with man, marriage, which must be honorable and respectable. For God honors marriage, and our parents needs to honor our marriages also. They need to help for that marriage to prosper, not to cause conflict. If we look at our society today, some marriages have ended up in a divorce just because of the way things have been handled with in-laws. It has come to a divorce because healthy boundaries were not set at the beginning of the marriage. And in-laws with poor education, with poor bad habits, inflated in the marriage and took upon themselves to apply their own policies. And if the couples are not in a one accord, conflicts will obviously arise. This is quite common, especially with African marriages. I'm an African by birth, and I've grown in my community, and I also have friends. You know, it also can be possible with interracial marriages, but I'm specifically saying it's quite common with African marriages because of our cultural background and lack of education on certain boundaries, and also the way in which those boundaries are supposed to be set are vital. Are vital. The first thing I want to focus when we are creating healthy boundaries with our in-law is the rule of communication. How do we communicate those healthy boundaries to our in-laws? We need to be very honest and clear about what we need from our in-laws and communicate in a respectful and calm manner. It is important to avoid being confrontational or accusatory when trying to set those boundaries. So, communication is a key point when setting boundaries and trying to communicate it to our in-laws. You may have good points in doing something, but the approach in which you present it can instead result to conflict, can instead bring stumbling block, can instead spoil what you are trying to build. So even in normal marriages, we have been talking a lot, communication is a vital key. And if we cannot communicate something properly, then we should be conscious of the consequences that will arise because of poor communication, poor presentation. So the way we approach, the manner of approach, the way we present our case, the way we present those boundaries, those things we want our in-laws to be involved, and the things they should be out of in our marriages should be very technical, the way we present it and the way it should be handled. The overall thing we need to consider is respect your in-laws. When you get married to a man, for instance, I am married to a Finnish man. I fully consider his parents as my mom and dad. They are my parents automatically. As they accepted me in marriage, they automatically became my parents. Likewise, my husband needs to consider my own parents like his own parents too, because they have offered their daughter in marriage to him. So we couples need to respect both parents. I need to respect my in-laws as my own parents, and my husband also needs to respect my parents as his own parents. That will avoid a lot of conflict. Because if you consider me as a daughter, for instance, my in-laws, when they consider me as a daughter, they will treat me like a daughter. Likewise, if my husband consider my parents as a father, then my parents should treat him as a son, as they are treating their own son. No parent will want to treat their children in a brutal way. That is factual. You will never like to treat your kids. We easily treat other kids with a kind of, I don't know the right word to use, but your own child you will try to safeguard. And parents need to consider their in-laws as their own children. That is the first area we need to focus on. And as I earlier said, respect should be one important thing we need to consider. Respect your in-laws. Respect your in-laws. Respect. And that's why when you are communicating those boundaries, you need to communicate in a calm and respectful manner. And you also need to avoid confrontation or accusation in anything you will be presenting to them. Setting healthy boundaries. We need to identify the boundaries that we need to set with our in-laws, such as how often they can visit, how involved they can be in our personal life, and what topics are offline, off limit. We need to communicate properly on whether they need to be with us for some period of time, helping us, especially when you are living in the same where your parents can come and stay at home. I personally don't encourage long-term stay. Personally, I'm talking about my personal view. I don't encourage long-term stay. Temporarily, they can come, help. They can come, help, support. But for our in-laws to permanently come and stay in your own home, I don't encourage that personally, because it's obvious it will result to a lot of conflict. So we need to set boundaries on how often they can visit us. We need to set boundaries on how they can be involved in our personal life and where they are not supposed to intervene. A stop. There must be a stop. Because if you give your parents full right in your marriage, the things they failed in their marriage, they will want to impose it in your own marriage. Because they have grown in that culture, and that is what they think is right. But you getting married to your husband, I believe you have had a courtship and you know him better than how your parents know him. You know the things that works for him and the things that does not work for him. You are the one that have decided to be there for better, for worse. So when you apply wrong rules from your parents, the confrontation you will have in marriage, you will bear the cross yourself. So there must be a limit in their involvement in your personal decisions and issues in your marriage. You can seek them for a little bit of advice, but their advice should not be the sole plan in your home. You will choose from what they may tip in. You choose the good and trash the ones that are not healthy in your home. But don't make it in such a way that everything your mom or dad tells you is what you need to apply in your marriage. You will have fiasco in your marriage. Because maybe your mom applied it to the husband and it worked for the husband because there are different personalities. But if she wants to impose that in your marriage, She doesn't know the things your husband loves best. You know your husband because you are the one living with your husband. And your husband knows you better because he is the one living with you. Even though he had lived with the parents, people change, character change, environment influences people, everything changes in the world. So you don't need to take everything she gives you or your parent, your father, any of them gives you to apply in your marriage. It will have a lot of headache. Set boundaries on how they can get involved in your affairs. It's not every affair in your home you need to call your parents to tell them. You are grown up. Try to work out, speak out with your husband, dialogue. If you need counseling, go in for counseling. Sort out things in between yourself. Don't carry every little query, every little fight back to your parents. It's wrong. That is what many women do. It's quite wrong. We are the ones causing conflict. And the advice, and especially when you're passing a message to somebody, is different. If the woman is not wise to confront the husband, to hear from him, you get from one side and you conclude from that side of the story you have gotten. And you push your daughter up into fiasco at home. Because we will always want to fix stories to favor us. That is man. And if that woman is not bold enough to wait and get from the husband also side before even concluding, just know that every advice she will be giving will work in alignment to what, for instance, the daughter revealed to her. So we need to set boundaries on what we need to take to our parents and what we don't need to take. And I will encourage you 70% of marital issues stays in the marriage, except the ones necessary for your parents to know. Because if you want to take every little conflict and fiasco to your parents, you will ruin your marriage because they will have bias. And when they start approaching your spouse with that kind of biased attitude, it will only bring resentment and pain and frustration. So we need to really identify the boundaries that we need to set. And we also need to really be respectful, as I earlier mentioned. It is also important to respect our in-laws' feeling, avoid making demands or ultimatums, and instead find a way to compromise with it. So what I'm just trying to say is we also need our spouses to be involved. Get your spouse involved so that when you guys have decided on those boundaries you want to set, it's better. Your husband will be better to approach his parents and give it to them in an understanding way, respectful way, and also the wife can speak to her parents in an understanding and polite way so that there won't be conflict, there won't be any kind of judgment, that kind of way. Because the way I'll be presenting it to my parents will be more will be more friendly because they are my parents, that they are the people we've grown together. They understand me and I understand them and I know how to approach and present a case to them. Likewise, my spouse also knows how to present a case to his parents. So we need to get our spouses involved in every healthy decisions we want to take between our in-laws, and always respect is the main issue. Respecting our parents. Very important. I talked of communication, I talked of respect, I talked of getting our spouses involved. And now we talk about flexibility. We need to be flexible in those boundaries. What do I mean by that? Why it's important to have boundaries? It's also important to be flexible and willing to compromise. We need to be open to hearing our in laws' perspective and try to find a solution that works for everyone. Flexibility. We have set the boundaries, we have taken it to our in laws, our parents, who know how to approach them better. We choose. And we also need to be very flexible and be willing to compromise and also have that open ear of hearing their own perspective and try to work out solution that best suits both of us. So there must be really flexibility. Our tone, our manner of approach, all those things are vital when setting boundaries with our in-laws. One thing I want us to remember when setting healthy boundaries with our in-law is not about getting them out of our lives. What am I saying by setting boundaries? I am not talking about just completely deleting them out of our life. Our in-laws are vital in our marriage. They are the strong bonds that can support us to grow better and stronger. So it's not like getting them out of our lives, but rather about establishing a respectful and mutual beneficial relationship with them. Setting boundaries, even in marriages, is not like you trying to prove to be strong or what. It's just making the other person have a limit and point to something that you don't respect. There should be a stop. And that is why it's also important for our in laws, for those boundaries to be set so that they know when they can enter and when they cannot go further that limit. You know, we are not silencing them. My in laws should be free. So that one thing I want my children to grow is knowing their grandparents to the best of it. Because that is what the children need, and that is what their parents, their grandparents also need, that relationship. There must be that cordial relationship. And those boundaries and limits also help to boost it so that there will not be conflict between we, the couples, and our in-laws. Because when there are lots of conflicts, it affects also the relationship with our children, our in-laws' relationship with our children. The best thing is to have a friendly and mutual relationship with our in-laws. And that is why setting healthy boundaries from the beginning of the marriage is important. You don't wait when things are already collapsing, then you want to set boundaries. No, you set it from onset so that it should not even crop, it should not even come up. And if both have that mutual understanding, have that hearing to hear what your in-laws have to say, and both apply it for the benefit of you and your in-laws, it will help your marriage positively. With a clear communication and willingness to compromise, you can create a positive and healthy relationship with your in-laws. I repeat, with clear communication and a willingness to compromise, you can create a positive and healthy relationship with your in-laws. So, all I just want us to pick for this week is how we can create a positive relationship with our in-laws by applying healthy boundaries and put it in mind mutual respect, communication, proper communication, not to be impulsive, but to come to a compromise and be truthful and put those things where there should be a stop, and how that relationship will flow so that your marriage will not influence your in laws negatively and their attitude won't affect your marriage negatively. Thank you all for joining. Hope you were blessed. But if there is any question, feel free to put it on the chat box or contact me personally on my pages. You can see it under need. And if you need one-on-one coaching, especially on relationship, contact me. Thank you all for joining this day. Remain blessed and God bless you. Bye. See you next week as the Lord tarries. Invite friends. Share the video. It may help new couples who are about to engage into a new relationship. It may help couples who are having conflicting ideas on how to relate with their in-laws. It's never too late to correct something. It's all about bringing your heads together and looking for the right solution in order to address the mainstream. Thank you once more and remain blessed. Bye.